Therefore, unless you're really fully proficient in laws which pertain to negative speech, which you're not permitted to say, what you are permitted to say, people fail continuously. And the Chafetz Chaim points out, to study it once, it's not enough. You really have to be well-weathered in this, where naturally you know what's right and what's wrong. It's not something you have to dredge up from your memory. Is this, or is that this? But rather, it's a sense. I'll give you an example. A person whose sense of smell works very well, and you smell a stench, you smell it. Naturally, you smell it. If you touch something which is warm, where your nerve endings work, you feel cold and you feel heat. If a person's mind and emotion is trained and geared and wired as it should be, which comes through studying and review, and you continuously are cognizant of the seriousness of crossing these lines, that person will always say the right thing. Even if he has an inkling to say the wrong thing, he will suppress it. I'll give you an example. Certain person doesn't speak necessarily, doesn't think before he speaks. And many people don't, unfortunately. But yet, when he goes and he works for his employer, and he understands that if he speaks out of turn, he'll be evaluated negatively, and he may actually compromise his credibility in the firm, and the consequence would be he may lose his job or not get the bonus. He's going to watch what he says, understanding the consequence of those words. So if a person fully appreciates the consequence, firstly, of what it could do to the other person, like person, what did I say? You know what you said? Do you know the damage you caused this other person? Character assassination. If it would have been you, what have you wanted to be? I mean, people pay a fortune to restore their credibility. And by you saying one word, you could destroy a person's life. What a person built his whole life, his goodwill, you could destroy it. Chafetz Chaim later speaks about very interesting situations. A person sells textiles. And this person comes to the seller and he picks the goods. And he knows exactly what to pick. And he says to the seller, he says, and it's a cash business. The seller will only release the goods if he pays COD. So he says, I'll be back in 2 hours with the money and I'll take the goods. So the seller says, fine. In the interim, someone else comes in and he says, I want to buy some textiles. He sees these textiles piled up. He says, no, that's exactly what I want. Are they for sale? And the man could pay immediately. He says, something? Why not? Take it. So the textiles, the first person picked. The second person comes, pays cash on the barrel, takes the textiles, goes. The original person comes back and he says, I have the money. Where are my textiles? He says, something? Somebody came back in the interim by the name of so-and-so, and he pressured me to such a degree, he forced me, he put the money on the table, he grabbed the goods, he grabbed the merchandise. You know what that is? You did two things. Firstly, you lied. It's a lie. Because the reason why you gave him the textiles is because you figured, if I could have the money, a bird in the hand is worth two in the bush. Here this man is paying, so he released the goods. So firstly, you lied. The man didn't force you. He didn't put the money and take the goods, whether you want it or not. You agreed, you released it, you encouraged him to take it. It's number one. Secondly, besides the lie, by sharing with him, by saying something that the other man forced me, so now the one who feels he's been done out of the merchandise, what does he feel? Now that he doesn't have that merchandise. So-and-so, I have a gripe against him. Because he said, although I told him it's for you, he says, it doesn't make a difference, I'm taking it. So what did he cause the relationship between the person who actually paid for it? The person had no idea, knew nothing. He says, you're welcome to take it. But when he tells this other person, who originally picked the goods, a tall tale, which is false. But based on that falsehood that he told him, what is the feeling between the original potential buyer and the one who actually took the goods? he bears a grudge in his heart. It creates a hate. Therefore, but who's at fault? The seller, the merchant, he's at fault. What about, there are other similar situations. So what are the consequences of this kind of talk? It's destructive.